Why is the United States $36 trillion in debt? Why is Japan 260% of their GDP in debt? And here's the part that will blow your mind. If every country is in debt, who the hell are they in debt to? If everyone owes money, who's getting paid? Stick with me for the next 12 minutes, because the answer will completely change how you see money, government, and who's really running the show. These questions sound simple. The answers? They'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the economy. Because national debt isn't like your credit card debt. It doesn't work the way they taught you in school, and the people getting rich off it? They're not who you think. Before we dive in, if you're new here, I expose financial truths like this every single week. If that sounds useful, consider subscribing. Alright, let's break this down. First, what even is national debt? When a country like the United States spends more money than it collects in taxes, it runs a deficit. Simple enough. To cover that deficit, the government borrows money by issuing bonds. A bond is basically an IOU. The government says, give us money now, and we'll pay you back with interest later. That's it. That's a bond. So who buys these bonds? Who's actually lending money to governments? This is where it gets interesting, and I mean really interesting. The biggest lenders to governments aren't other countries. They're their own citizens. In the United States, about 22% of the national debt is owed to American citizens and institutions. Pension funds, retirement accounts, insurance companies, mutual funds. Your 401k? It probably owns some used treasury bonds right now. You're literally lending money to the government and don't even know it. Another 30% is owned by the Federal Reserve, which is technically part of the US government. So let me say this clearly. The government owes money to itself. The government borrowed money from the government. Wrap your head around that one. And then you've got foreign governments. China owns about $1 trillion of US debt. Japan owns about the same. But combined, foreign countries only own about 30% of total US debt. The idea that China owns America because they hold our debt? Complete myth. We owe way more to ourselves than to foreign countries. But here's what nobody tells you about that. Now here's the question that should keep you up at night. If governments can just print money, why do they borrow at all? Seriously. Why not just create the money they need and skip the whole debt thing? This is where things get really weird. Governments could technically print unlimited money. The printing press exists. They control it. But if they did that, inflation would spiral out of control. Your money would become worthless. We're talking Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe-level collapse. So instead, they borrow money by issuing bonds, which creates debt but theoretically controls inflation. Except it doesn't really control inflation anymore, does it? We've printed trillions in the last few years and inflation exploded anyway. But the system continues. Why? Because it benefits the people who own the bonds. They get guaranteed returns funded by your taxes. The government borrows, you pay interest through taxes, bondholders get rich. It's a wealth transfer system disguised as responsible national finance. If you're starting to feel like something's wrong with this picture, good. You're paying attention. Hit that like button if this is making sense. So far, it tells YouTube to show this to more people. Let's keep going. Now let's talk about why every country is in debt. You'd think at least some countries would be debt-free, right? Running surpluses, saving money, being responsible fiscal citizens of the world. But almost no country does this. Why? Because the entire global financial system is built on debt. Debt isn't a bug in the system. Debt is the system. Here is what they do and teach you in economics class. Debt is how money is created in modern economies. When a bank gives you a mortgage, they don't have that money sitting in a vault somewhere. They create it out of thin air through the act of lending. The same is true at the national level. Government debt creates money supply. If countries paid off all their debt, the money supply would shrink dramatically. The economy would collapse, and we'd enter a massive deflationary spiral. So governments never intend to pay off the debt, ever. They just keep refinancing it forever. Think about it like this. The US national debt was $1 trillion in 1981. Now it's $36 trillion. Did we pay off the original trillion? No. We just borrowed more. We refinanced old debt with new debt and kept growing the pile. Every country does this. It's not a mistake. It's the design. Japan is the most extreme example, and this is going to sound insane. Their national debt is 260% of GDP. That means they owe more than twice what their entire economy produces in a year. If Japan were a person, they'd be the most bankrupt human being on planet Earth. but they're not bankrupt. Their economy functions fine. How? Because most of their debt is owned by Japanese citizens and institutions. They owe money to themselves in their own currency. As long as people keep buying Japanese bonds, the system continues indefinitely. And here's the key insight that changes everything. Countries that borrow in their own currency can never truly go bankrupt. The US borrows in dollars. Japan borrows in yen. The UK borrows in pounds. They can always print more of their own currency to pay the debt. It causes inflation, sure, but it's not bankruptcy. You can't default on debt, you can print money to pay. Compare that to a country like Greece. They borrow in euros, which they don't control. When Greece couldn't pay its debts, they actually went broke. Why? Because they couldn't print euros, only the European Central Bank can do that. Greece had to actually find the money. The US, Japan, UK? They can just create it. Different rules for different players. But wait, it gets worse. So who really benefits from national debt? Not you. Not regular taxpayers working paycheck to paycheck. The people who benefit are bondholders, wealthy individuals, banks, financial institutions, foreign governments. They lend money to governments and collect interest funded by your taxes. It's a system where the government borrows from the rich and pays them back with money taken from everyone else through taxation. Let's use real numbers because this gets infuriating. The US government pays about $600 billion per year just in interest on the national debt. $600 billion. That's $600 billion that could go to healthcare, education, infrastructure, fixing literally anything, but instead it goes to bondholders. People who already have money, collecting more money, funded by your taxes. And as the debt grows, so does the interest payment. In a few years, interest on the debt will be the single largest item in the federal budget. Bigger than defense, bigger than Social Security, bigger than everything. Just pure interest payments to people who own bonds. And here's the part that should make you angry. A lot of that interest goes to the ultra-wealthy and foreign governments. So American taxpayers, you are funding interest payments to Chinese bondholders, Saudi wealth funds, billionaire investors. It's reverse Robin Hood. Take from the middle class through taxes, give to the wealthy through bond interest. That's the system. Drop a comment right now. Are you starting to see how rigged this is? Let me know what's shocking you most so far. Now you might be thinking, okay, but doesn't debt eventually become a problem? This can't go on forever, right? And the answer is nobody actually knows. The traditional economic view is that too much debt causes inflation, raises interest rates, and eventually leads to a debt crisis. But Japan's been testing that theory for 30 years and nothing's collapsed yet. Their debt is at 260% of GDP and they're fine. Modern monetary theory argues that as long as a country controls its own currency, debt doesn't really matter. Just print more money and manage inflation. But here's the problem. We are in completely uncharted territory. Global debt is over $315 trillion. That's 3 times global GDP. It's debt on a scale humanity has never seen before in all of history. And we're all just hoping the system doesn't break. Because if it does, if people lose faith in government bonds and stop buying them, the entire global financial system collapses overnight. Governments can't borrow. They can't fund operations, everything stops. Economic apocalypse. This is why central banks stepped in during the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic. When the bond market started to freeze up and people stopped buying bonds, central banks became the buyer of last resort. They bought trillions in government bonds to keep the system functioning. The Federal Reserve now owns over $5 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds. The Bank of Japan owns half of all Japanese government bonds. Central banks are propping up the entire debt system because if it fails, everything fails. They can't let it collapse. So they just keep buying bonds, printing money, and hoping inflation doesn't destroy the currency. That's where we are right now. Quick pause if you're realizing how insane this system is and you want to understand more about how money really works, hit that subscribe button right now. I break down financial truths like this every single week that they don't want you to understand. Don't miss the next one. Alright, let's wrap this up. So to answer the original question, why is every country in debt and who do they owe? They're in debt because the global financial system requires debt to function. Debt creates money. Without debt, there's no money supply, no lending, no economic growth as we know it. The system is built on debt by design, and who do they owe? They owe themselves, their own citizens, institutions, and central banks, plus some foreign governments and investors. But here's the real answer that nobody wants to say out loud. National debt is a tool for transferring wealth from taxpayers to bondholders. It's not about paying it back. It's not about being fiscally responsible. It's about maintaining a system where governments can spend unlimited amounts. Central banks can print unlimited money, and wealthy bondholders collect guaranteed returns funded by your taxes. You work. You pay taxes. Those taxes pay interest on government debt. That interest goes to people who already have money. That's the system. And it will continue until either inflation destroys the currency or people stop believing government bonds are safe. When that happens, the whole thing collapses. So the next time someone tells you the national debt is a crisis and we need to cut spending, ask them this. Cut spending on what? Not on interest payments to bondholders, that's untouchable. Nobody talks about cutting that. They want to cut spending on you, on programs that benefit regular people. Social Security, Medicare, education, infrastructure, because the debt itself? That's not going anywhere. It's the foundation of the entire system. They can't touch it without collapsing everything. Every country is in debt because debt is the system. And the system is designed to benefit the people who own the debt, not the people who pay for it. You're paying for it. They're collecting. If this video completely changed how you see national debt and government spending, do two things for me right now. First, smash that like button so this reaches more people who need to understand this. Second, subscribe to this channel because I expose how the financial system really works every single week. The stuff they do and teach you in school and actively do and want you to know. Drop a comment telling me what shocked you most. Was it that governments owe money to themselves? That debt creates the money supply? That your tax dollars fund interest payments to billionaires and foreign governments? Let me know. I read every comment. And if you want to go deeper into how the system is rigged, watch my video on Bybro. Die next that's how billionaires legally avoid paying taxes using a 3-step strategy you've then never heard of. Or check out my breakdown of why your parents' financial advice doesn't work anymore. The more you understand how money really works, the less they can screw you with it. National debt isn't your problem to solve, it's their system to maintain. And as long as you keep paying taxes, they'll keep borrowing. Bondholders will keep collecting, and the game continues. Now you know how it works. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? See you in the next one, where breaking down why you actually can't afford a house anymore. And no, it's not because you buy too much avocado toast. Subscribe so you don't miss it.